All right, so the focus for today is going to be on the solving, okay? So if we start with number 19, the big idea that you need to know is that we always want to set equal to 0 when we go to solve. All right? So number 19, if I wanted to set this equal to 0, what would I need to do? Add 15 to both sides. Okay? So now I've got an x squared plus 8x plus 15 equals 0. None of those are like terms, so I can't combine any of them together. Now I do what I did on the front side. I factor. So can anybody come up with two numbers that multiply to be 15 that add to be an 8?
5 and 3.
5 and 3. So x plus 5, x plus 3, x plus 3, x plus 5, same thing. All right, so now we're up to the point of what we did yesterday. Now we get to what's known as the zero product property. How can you multiply two things and end in a 0? How can you multiply two numbers and get 0? Multiplying by 0. So what we're going to do is, since we don't know which one of these parentheses is 0, we're going to basically assume they both are. So we're going to do x plus 5 equals 0. Well, if x plus 5 equals 0, what does x equal? X equals negative 5. If x plus 3 equals 0, what does x equal? Negative 3. So if you remember doing this last year in algebra, you might have remembered the fact that your solutions are always the opposite of what you got in the parentheses. Does that ring a bell? Sound familiar? Okay. All right. But the goal is you always want to set equal to 0 first. All right. So let's skip down to number 23. So if we do the same concept, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 32 to both sides. So now I've got a 2n squared minus 32 equals 0. What should I do? Greatest common factor. What's the greatest common factor? 2. So I take out a 2 and I have an n squared minus 16 equals 0. All right. Factor n squared minus 16, like the last 6 questions from yesterday's homework. Okay, so n minus 4, n plus 4 equals 0. All right, so then what does n equal?
4 and negative 4.
N equals positive 4 from the first parentheses, and n equals negative 4 from the second parentheses, because it's the opposite. Does that ring a bell? Okay? No, you're confused?
How did you take out the 2?
We took out a GCF. We divided by 2 and divided by 2.
Okay.
Okay? So always look for GCF first. Okay? Yes?
If you put n as, oh actually never mind.
You good?
Well, yeah, because if you put n in as 4, so would it be like 16, then times 2, 32, and then the next one's a negative 32, so then you just add them.
No. Because what happens when I square negative 4? What's negative 4 times negative 4? Positive 16, and then times the 2 also equals 32. So it would both solutions work in the equation.
So 32 equals 0, so it like doesn't work.
What?
32 doesn't equal 0, obviously.
No, what if you're checking your answer, 2 times 4 squared equals 32. Check. 2 times negative 4 squared, which is 16 times 2, also equals 32. Check. It works. And if you were to check it down here, well, you would get 32 minus 32, which is 0. So it does work. Okay? All right. Now, I do want to show a different way to do the ones that only have a quadratic term. Okay? And what I mean by that is if I go back to number 19, okay, x squared is the quadratic term, 8x is the linear term. I got one of each. If I only have a quadratic term like number 23, I can do it a different way. Okay? So some of you might like this because it will be a little bit shorter. If I take my 2n squared equal to 32 and just divide by 2 right away, I get n squared equal to 16. How can I get plain n? Take the square root of both sides. But if I do that, I get n is equal to 4. But that doesn't make any sense because I had a 4 and a negative 4 doing it the other way. So what you need to remember is anytime you take the square root of both sides, your answer has a positive and a negative. So it's plus or minus 4. So anytime you take the square root, you always need plus or minus. Okay? So either do it the factor way and you guaranteed get positive, negative, or you have to remember if you take square roots, do the positive, negative. Okay? Because you always need two solutions. All right? Are there any others on this page that you want to do together? Like a 26 or something? Yes, Matt?
Can you do 24 but do it on the fraction way the other way?
Which way? 24?
Yeah, do it square root way.
Sure. Okay? So what should we do first?
Add 100.
Add 100 over. Okay, so now I've got 5x squared equal to 125. Now, what do I do?
Divide by 5.
Divide by 5, because you always want to get your x squared by itself. So now I've got x squared equal to, what's 125 divided by 5?
25.
25. Now I take the square root of both sides. Square root of x squared is just plain old x. And anytime I take the square root, I got to have plus or minus. And what is the square root of 25? 5. So there you go. That's the way that you could do it using the square root method. Good? Okay. Any others that look like they might give you trouble?
22.
22? Sure. Okay. So on 22, the big idea here is you always want to have it in standard form. And what I mean by standard form is when I go to add the 10x to set it equal to 0, always put your x squared first, then your 10x, then your constant, your 24. And whenever you're solving any other ones, always have your x squared be positive. It's easier. Okay? So now all I do is I factor. So give me two numbers that multiply to be 24, that add to be 10.
674.
Do you agree with them?
Yes.
All right, so x plus 6, x plus 4. What does x equal?
Negative 6.
-6. X equals
Negative 4.
-4. There are my two solutions. Okay? Anybody else? Okay. So then